Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Steve Wyss. I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Jonathan Fadugba, for another episode. Jonathan, how's things going there now with you?
Steve, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and to you as well, the listener, wherever you are in the world. Hope you're having a nice time. I'm good, and yeah, it's been an interesting week in our leagues recently, hasn't it? Things are starting to heat up. We're about 33% of the way into the season in both leagues. We're getting towards the summer break in Sweden. So, yeah, I could say we're definitely in the swing of things. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right, thank you, Jonathan. Are you having withdrawal symptoms yet from Sweden? From Gothenburg? I know you enjoyed your time over there. I'm sure watching that the Gothenburg derby brought back some recent memories for you. But we're actually going to start with Norway this week.
Well, yeah, I'm always having withdrawal symptoms. I keep sort of manifesting it and saying, if anyone ever wants to offer me a flat in Gothenburg, I'm more than happy to move back there. So yeah, manifesting it again for the millionth time. But yeah, we'll come to that. Obviously, Gothenburg derby, big game. But we are going to start in Norway, as you've mentioned there, Steve, where there's been a cup final, and that is the main talking point. Obviously, we've just had a Monday round as well. I'll read out the results from that just now. Bodø/Glimt 5, Viking 1, Brann 3, Rosenborg 1, Haugesund 1, Tromsø 2, Molde 5, Sandefjord 0, another team hitting 5, two teams hitting 5 there. Odd 1, Strømsgodset 1, Sarpsborg 3, Arlesund 1, Stabæk 2, Vålerenga 1, and HamKam 0, Lillestrøm 0. And that leaves the table looking, well, pretty good for Bodø/Glimt in this moment in time. They're comfortably top of the league at the moment. Played 9 and 25 points. They're 8 points clear of Brann in second. And am I right in seeing Sarpsborg in third? That is crazy. But we'll come to all that. We've got to start with the cup final, Steve. Let's hear your breakdown of it. Obviously, who played, who won. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, this is officially the Norwegian Cup final of 2022. What we did know, whoever won this cup final between Brann and Lillestrøm, they would be defending their title just 4 days later with the start of the next Norwegian Cup, which is kind of a bit of an anomaly, really. But Brann faced Lillestrøm. I mentioned on the last episode I actually had a lean towards Lillestrøm to beat them. I thought they had the better team, slightly a bit more experience. But I got it wrong. Brann won 2-0 and deservedly so as well. They dominated this cup final, really. By far the better team. Didn't really surprise me to see Bård Finne get himself on the score sheet. He's been brilliant this season. And it was almost fitting that he got them the second goal. But yeah, from start to finish, they were just the better team. As simple as that. It's one of those where I don't think anyone can really have any complaints about Brann. And what a story, really, because for half of this competition, they were actually an Obos Ligaen team. So even though an Eliteserien club has won the cup final, I mean, technically, it was half and half, really, wasn't it? So, well done to Brann. For a team that were relegated horrifically on penalties, it was something like 12-11 back in the 2021 season, to rebound, have an amazing year in Obos last year, and now win a Norwegian Cup. They're in Europe, the second in the Eliteserien. Happy days.
Yeah, an incredible achievement for Brann, and especially, as you mentioned there, with their rebuild after the well-known sex scandal and all that from a couple of seasons ago that we talked about. I remember that. Steve, it's the 7th time they've won the cup. Last time they won it was in 2004. So, and the previous time before that was 1982. So this is kind of something that only happens every kind of 20 years, roughly. So a massive achievement for them. Their first sort of honours for quite a while. Obviously, they won the second division last season, but in terms of top level honours, it's the first honours since 2007 when they won the Eliteserien. So put this into context, Steve, for us. Like, obviously, that means they're going to be in Europe. What does it mean for their fans? They, in your pre-season preview, you had them in 6th. Are they sort of on track for where you thought they'd be, or maybe even doing a little bit better?
For the first time, I'm starting to think I've got it wrong with 6th. I must say, I said, didn't I, in the pre-season show, I didn't really see them getting a medal. I could see them getting the bronze medal because it looks to me now, I think Bodø/Glimt has started so strong. They're going to be really hard to catch. And I do think the Molde's overall strength will eventually get them into second place. But third spot is up for grabs. No doubt about it. There's quite a few teams who might be looking at that third spot. Obviously, getting into Europe, though, in some ways might hinder them because we know they've got a small squad. But they've also got a transfer window in the summer that they can reinforce it with. So let's just see what business they do there. Being involved in these European qualifiers can be brutal for teams that are not used to playing, Wednesday or Thursday and then at the weekend. So if they did get an extended run in those qualifiers, it could impact them in terms of league position. But for the first time, I'm starting to think Brann are a medal threat in the Eliteserien. I will admit to that. And 6th place prediction does look a couple of notches too low.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that just a few days after winning the cup, they played another game in the cup, didn't they? They started their next cup campaign 4 days later. They played and won 5-0 against a team by the name of Frøya. So, yeah.
If they got knocked out of that, it would have been the shortest ever
reign. I was about to say, is that the shortest ever cup celebration in history? They get 3 days to enjoy it. And then they go and play start the cup again. I mean, that must be, if anyone knows of a shorter cup success reign in history, then tweet us at Nordic Football or leave a message on YouTube, because that is very, very they don't get much time to celebrate to this, Steve. Is Bård Finner, where does he rank in terms of forwards in this league? He's the man that everyone's talking about right now.
Very highly right now. He's in the form of his life. I questioned, didn't I, the last time he was in this league, if we saw that version of him, then he would be quite inconsistent. But it's quite clear. I mean, he's the joint top scorer in the league along with Pellegrino. Bård Finner is just someone who he seems to be loving life at Brann right now. He's improved technically, I think, since he was last in this division. He's a better finisher than he ever once was. I don't really know what's happened. It's like going down to Obos and smashing teams and scoring loads of goals has done him the world of good. And he's just transferred it into now playing at the top level. He's now much more confident in front of goal. And, he's got some, I forget his age. He's like 27. Jonathan, you might be able to help me out here. But he's one of those, he's sort of maturing just the right time for Brann, really. And he's sort of spearheading their campaign. He's
28.
28, yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of peak period, isn't it, for his, strikers. But if you hear something in the background there, by the way, that is actually one of my quails. I've got some pet quails these days. So
you are really like Dr. Dolittle, aren't you? I thought I could hear something. I thought it might be a cat, but a quail.
Yeah, something a bit different, mate. But yeah, obviously the quails like Bård Finner, don't they? So
even the quails are fans of Bård Finner, the 28-year-old. He's doing really, really well at this moment in time. And so, Brann, just a word on the fans. Steve, what would this mean for the fans? I mean, winning the cup.
Massive for them. I mean, I've always compared Brann as like the Liverpool of Norway. And you know what it's like when things are going well on Merseyside, you really hear from their fans. Like, they're really excited and they kind of build things up to a huge proportion. And this club is really confident right now. The supporters are loving life. And they're the sort of fans that will sometimes get, a bit above themselves and dream of really high aspirations. But why not dream sometimes? Why not aim really high? I think Brann, as a club now, can realistically look at a project where they can compete for the Eliteserien title within the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, this season already, they may well end up finishing second or even having a run at Bodø/Glimt. They're the only team to get any points off Bodø/Glimt so far. They nearly beat them at Aspmyra Stadion. Glimt came from 2-0 down to equalise late. So I think it's an era for Brann now. It's a new era. And if they did win a gold medal in the next 2 or 3 seasons, it wouldn't shock me if they now improve on the recruitment, keep the good feeling, the manager. But the fans are really, really getting behind them. Though I've never really seen such a good feeling around this club for a long time.
Yeah, Finner's goal in the cup final was excellent. Rolls his man, beats a couple of players. That's a real player on confidence. I mean, that's a brilliant strike. Really looks like a really well attended game as well. Just briefly a word on Lillestrøm. Where do they go from here in terms of losing a cup? It's always going to hurt. What impact will that have on them?
I think probably hopefully talk about them a little bit later in the match against Hacken, because there was a bit of a hangover in that. I think it was a blow for Lillestrøm, because I think it's a cup final which I'm not saying they expected to win, but I think they would have felt they had a decent chance of winning it and getting back into Europe again. And for them, it would have been kind of the culmination of their own revival in the last 3 or 4 years. So disappointment. I think it's one of those finals which would have hurt for them, because they beat Bodø Glimt in the semi-final to get to this stage. They beat. I think they had a tougher run to the final than Brann. It would have maybe felt like it was going to be their year, but yeah, losing that sort of final can knock your confidence, can't it?
Most definitely, and also well done to Ole Didrik Blomberg, who scored the first goal in that cup final for Brann. Play we haven't really talked about much, but he got a nice goal as well. So let's move on. The big talking point this week. I mean, it feels like we've talked about them a lot this season, actually, in their troubles, but can't avoid them. Massive club in this league, Rosenborg, beaten again.
Yeah, this is now getting into a serious situation for Rosenborg. They're 11th in the table after 9 games, and they've played a game more than most teams around them. So this is just not acceptable, Jonathan. They've lost 4 of the last 5 games, just 2 victories all season. I think the pressure's on Kjetil Rekdal. I know you asked me in the last show, what's going to happen with him, and I said they had to beat Haugesund. They did. They only beat 10-man Haugesund 1-0. It wasn't exactly a convincing win. And then I said that he really needed to come to Brann and get something. And they've gone and lost 3-1. I think the worst thing about it is that no one's really shocked by this. Brann were heavy favourites to win the game. They got themselves ahead early and double the lead just after half time. Blomberg again. He's had a good week, hasn't he? As Blomberg. Then there was a weird period where Rosenborg actually got on top. They were given a penalty. Ingerson missed it. It was a horrendous miss. Tame as a teddy bear finish, but it was VAR'd and the goalkeeper had just slightly come off his line. So Henriksen took the retake and buried it. But yeah, who else sealed the win for Brann? Bård Finner again, 88th minute. Deserved win for Brann. And my, how the tables have turned. I mean, in the last decade, in this century, Rosenborg have been well on top of Brann as a club. And it just feels like now, maybe, it's going in the opposite direction. For himself personally, Arik Horneland would have enjoyed beating Rosenborg after how, things went so badly wrong for him there. They look a mess. And I actually think the club will fire Kjetil Rekdal. I think I'm not sure he survives this defeat, but they do have a much softer run of fixtures coming up soon. So they've got to make a decision about this manager.
I mean, I'm actually, as you were speaking there, Steve, trying to find out what division of Norway is Trig Lada, who they Rosenborg beat in the cup 1-0. I mean, I don't even think they're in the 4th tier, are they?
Well, I don't think there are even any odds offered for the game, which suggests that it was a vast difference in class. I mean, that alone is a worry. I mean, if you look at the Norwegian
Cup, beat them by more than 1 goal. I mean, that, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I can't actually find what division they're in.
If you look at the other Norwegian Cup results, most Eliteserien clubs win very convincingly against anyone below the 3rd tier. But that is a big worry that only to win 1-0, isn't it? But it just, I've said for a while, offensively, I don't have any faith in them at the moment. And, now defensively, they can't be relied upon either. Rekdal has been a bit unlucky that obviously they lost Kasper Tengstedt, a big player for them. And the back end of last season, he got them playing some good football. He did. So he does have some credit in the bank. But it's Rosenborg. That credit can run out very, very quickly if you're not if you're down in 11th place with 9 points after 9 games, it's just not acceptable. They've got Hacken at home next. That's a must-win game. Nothing less than a win's acceptable, whoever's in charge. Maybe they'll give him that game. But he's getting into a period now where every single fixture is a must-win for them. Otherwise, he could lose his job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested to find out what division Triglav are in. I'm on their website. I've gone on the Norwegian Football Federation's website. I can't find, with a quick Google search, like I say, what league they're in.
Well, obviously they're in quite a low league, aren't they?
It's not even a league table on their website, so clearly they're not that high. So to only beat them 1-0 is extremely worrying times for Rosenborg. I mean, we have covered them in terms of the manager and the potential that he could lose his job. They've got some pretty tricky fixtures coming up as well. It's not.
There is a cup match actually coming up this midweek. They've got Sturdel's Blink away. I mean, just say they lost that. That really would be the final straw, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we have a question from. We have a couple of questions actually. Odin's Creation, Dr. John Porkenheimer is his new alias. He says, "Where will RBK finish?" And obviously, we had a question from Barisha Show, Showtime Barisha, loyal friend of the pod. I don't really want to ask you this because I don't think it's fair on the current manager saying who's going to replace Rekdal. So we'll save that for another week. But where do you think they will finish, Steve?
God, where did I have them in this preseason predict? Did I have them third? I think I did, didn't I? Maybe fourth. But it's not going to be that high now. They're already they've dropped so many points. Maybe they could get into the top 6 still. I mean, it's still a decent squad here. They've got resources. They've got money from that 10-step transfer in the summer. They can reinforce the squad. So I'd be surprised if they don't make it into the top 6. Into Rekdal, what would I do myself personally with him? I don't know. He's certainly not one of them.
Let's not talk about Rekdal.
Well, no, I do want to give an opinion because it's one of those where I will tell it straight. If I personally believe a manager should get fired, there's no way I personally have strong feelings that he should go because I think he's done plenty of good things for the club, and in terms of his career in the last few years, did very well at Hacken. So I think there's arguments either way, but it's one of those where because they're such a big club and the results are not there. That's why there's so much talk about it.
But where a manager can be responsible, but where is the manager doesn't go out on the pitch and play against what is
he doesn't.
Fifth-tier team, 6th-tier team in Norway in the cup and beat them 1-0. So you said there they've got the 10-step money. What can they do with it? What do they need in the summer window? Where do they actually need to strengthen? What key areas? They can't just be on the manager.
No, it's not. No, I think they.
And your prediction was 4th, by the way.
I think at least it's not 3rd. I mean, I'm just looking at this squad now, and I think fundamentally at the moment, the players that they bought in the winter transfer window have not worked out yet. Like to Jaden Nelson, Isak Schnær Thorvaldsen. I know he's been injured a bit. Oscar Aga's not done much. £500,000 there. Sadiku came in from Honka. He's been on the bench all the time. Bierlo was really good for Hacken last year. He's been in and out of the team so far. So at the moment, you could say the transfers have not flopped, but they just haven't really added enough to the first team 11. If they were going to bring people, I think they need to get in a proven number 9 scorer. But now the squad's kind of loaded with these attackers that are kind of all very similar. So I don't know, mate. I think it's a tricky situation for Rosenborg. I mean, you could just say they could look at reinforcing all areas if they believe they've got a better quality player that could come in.
Yeah, and something interesting. Still on this Trig. Still trying to find out where Triglav are. Apparently, do you remember Bjorn Torkavami?
No. Former
Liverpool player and Rosenborg.
Oh, player. Yeah.
He's 50 years old now. He's retired. Obviously, remember he played for Liverpool, played for Saint Etienne, Real Sociedad. I think he was a centre back, I think, or a defender. Apparently, according to this website, football.no, Bjorn Tora Kvarma is a trainer for the girls under 12s at Triglada. I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to have to email him probably and ask him if he's got his email address here. So I might have to email him and say, what division is this team in? But yeah, the point is, if they can't even beat this team, then Rosenborg must be in real trouble. It sounds like they've got a lot of work to do in the transfer window, as you've mentioned. Their signing's not paying off, not going well for them at this moment in time. Did you actually give a predicted finish?
I'll say sixth. I'll say sixth now.
Okay. Sixth is fine.
We'll stick to that.
Sixth it is, from fourth to sixth. So, who knows? Let's see if they can improve their fortunes. But as it stands, well, they're not even in the top 10. So let's see if they can pick up their form. And they're going to have a lot of work to do if the manager is going to keep his job, as you've mentioned. Let's move on to another team, another talking point here, and that is well, it's not a team, is it? VAR. I actually sighed as I read that on the itinerary. Go on, VAR. Let's hear it.
Well, yeah, every week. I mean, I watched this game, local derby match, Stabæk against Vålerenga. Stabæk have ended up winning this game with 9 men. There was 2 red cards, and they were both done by VAR. Now, the first red was on, I think it was Krogstad. Stabæk actually led 2-0 in this game, by the way. Kasper Wartz-Ho, who's on the 10 to watch list this year. Another goal for him, quite impressive. And then Mushaka Bakenga, one of our favourite players on the Nordic Football Podcast, pops up with a controversial second goal, which also went to VAR. I actually thought that should have been disallowed because it did hit his hand. I don't even know what is the law now. I thought if the goal scorer, if it hits his hand in any fashion, the goal has to be disallowed. If you do have a chance to take a look at Bakenga's goal, I thought it should have been chalked off, but it was given anyway. And then say Krogstad was given a yellow card, which was upgraded to red, 51st minute. And I mean, I looked at this one. It's one of those that I predicted pre-season. You're going to see quite a few of these in Norway this year where, back in the day, you wouldn't really moan at a yellow card in Norway for it, but sort of globally in the mainstream leagues, they're trying to upgrade these tackles to red now. So it's one of those where 50-50. And then 82nd minute, there was another red given for a handball and a penalty was awarded to Pachanik. I thought this was harsh for a red card, I must say. I'm not going to moan at it was a penalty, yeah, but it wasn't a red card for me. The worst of it was, I think it denied Isak Pettersson an unbelievable save statistic. If you look at the build-up to this penalty, Pettersson made an unbelievable save after the handball. One of the best I've seen. And I tweeted something around the time how much a ridiculous signing Isak Pettersson is for Stabæk. He's far too good for a club like this. He should be at a much bigger team because he keeps making some brilliant saves. But the penalty was converted, so Vålerenga played the last 10 minutes, if you include injury time, against 9 men, but they couldn't get an equaliser. So really poor from Vålerenga. I wasn't impressed with them in this game. But in terms of the VAR had a big impact on this game, no doubt about it.
What's your argument about Bakenga's goal? You're saying that maybe...
Well, I actually thought it definitely hits his hand. I know there's not much he could do about it, but I thought the law was if it hits the goal scorer's hand at any point, then it should be chalked off. It took them about 5 minutes to make a decision on this, by the way. It's quite a long wait. I was convinced it was going to be chalked off, but it was given.
Yeah, to me it looks like a handball. I haven't seen the slow motions and stuff, but on first instinct that does look like if it was Premier League, I think that would be given as a handball. Maybe.
Suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah. but yeah, well, I mean, sometimes I just get fed up with talking about VAR. Really.
Well, let's talk about the football then, because Stabæk, good.
But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Stabæk are up to 6th, and Vålerenga 9th. I mean, yeah, what's the story there with Stabæk? With these two teams, what's the story there?
I mean, they're big rivals, 2 teams in the Oslo region. It's not as big as Lillestrøm Vålerenga, but actually it's Lillestrøm Stabæk next week. So it's like a triangle of rivalries down there. But I mean, I expected Vålerenga to probably win this game. They're the better team on paper, squad. They didn't show up in the first half at all, though. I thought Stabæk wanted it more. and played some decent football at times. Vålerenga just seemed to lack the physical qualities to compete. I think their fans would be really disappointed with this display. They didn't even really look like getting back into the game against 10 men. Obviously, they were gifted that penalty, and then they couldn't even equalise against 9. And they didn't really look like equalising to me. You just kind of knew, one of those where, yeah, Pettersson did make some good saves at times, but only 3 on target in the whole match. Although the best save, I don't think, was registered as a shot on goal, unfortunately, because it would have been reverted back to the foul. But very poor from Vålerenga. I'd be interested to hear what their fans think about their season so far, because it isn't really, they're very up and down. They're so inconsistent. You don't know which version of them is going to show up. But I'm a bit concerned that they're showing some real weak mentality in the big fixtures in the matches against their key rivals.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 players in your 10 to watch the season that played in this game. I'm not gonna name both. If you want to know both, you can go to patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. We're going to talk about one of our 20 players selected this season's already left the league. We do seem to have a bit of a knack for picking out these talents, Steve. I won't name both, but Wartso that you mentioned there, his goal, 7th minute, just kind of creeped in back post, sort of poacher's goal, really. He curiously wears number 69 on his shirt. I'm not entirely sure why. He's 22, 23 years old now, so it's not as if he's, a youngster that's just broken into the squad. So I don't know if that's some sort of in-joke. But what can you tell us about this player? Because, he's in your 10 to watch. I don't want to give too much away on that if you want to go and watch the full show, but just give us an inkling as to why you selected him and what you like about him.
He just looks a massive physical handful. I think I'm going to compare him to Darwin Núñez a bit, actually, in terms of his physique and build. And I feel like, so if you're not in the mood to deal with that sort of tall physical player, it's not much fun on a football field, is it? It really isn't. He can win headers, but he's one of those players that he's not just, a big donkey who he's all about physical. He does have that technical ability as well, and he's starting to improve his positional skills. Bagged a few goals now this year. A lot of people, when the signings were made, Bekenga and Kasper Wartso up front. Bekenga was what everyone was talking about, the proven scorer at this level. But Wartso is on loan, of course, from one of the Danish teams, so he's not Starbec's player. But it looks like he's going to be a really good addition for them this season, and he's buying into the club philosophy. He looks up for it, and it's just just an absolute nightmare of a handful to deal with as a defender. And if you're not careful, that sort of player can get on top of you. Yeah,
and I'm looking at your 10 to watch now, and I can say that some of the players on this list are doing pretty well this season. So if you haven't listened to it yet, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast are what's the way of describing it? It's kind of like our showpiece occasion of the season, one of them anyway, as well as the season preview. I think so far, Steve, our 20 are doing pretty well this year. So if you're a scout, if you enjoyed knowing the next big players from these regions, I'm sure you will enjoy that. So check it out on Patreon. And Wartso is one of them. Yeah, he definitely gave me Andy Carroll vibes, and the celebration he pulled out as well was quite an interesting one. So if anyone knows why he wears number 69 in his back, I'd be curious to know that as well. Tweet us at Nordic Footpod, or email us, or of course YouTube. Let us know. Steve, we've got to talk about Glimt before we move on to our final talking point of Lillestrøm, who we touched on earlier. I mean, they're sort of running away with this league, aren't they, at the moment, really? 8 points clear already.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I mean, I watched this game against Viking. 5-1 they won. Now, they do have moments where the opposition can score on them. I think Viking deserved a goal, maybe deserved a second goal. But, I mean, at times I'm watching Glimt today, and they just look like they could score at will. There was a lot of other big chances missed. It could have been 8 or 9. They just free-flowing attacking football. Offensively, they look unstoppable right now. It reminds me of 2021, 2020, where no one had an answer for their offensive firepower. And they're just such a well-oiled machine again. I mean, Patrick Berg back in the middle of the park, I think, makes a big difference. He's such a great player. He scored a fantastic goal in this game as well. He's not known for his scoring that many goals, but when he does score, he tends to absolutely have Galatzos. Pemi Mumbanya up front is becoming the striker that they need. Pellegrino is a bit of quality. And then Vuka actually had a decent game. He's not statistically had a great year so far, but he bagged himself a couple of goals. I thought he was probably the man of the match, actually. FC Lorient, enjoying what they were seeing there. He's obviously going to be moving. He's on loan there until the end of June, and then he'll be hopefully tearing up Liga from August onwards. But they look really good. And I think if they can just continue sort of being this express train until the European qualifiers start, I think the whole idea is to try and get this league out of sight so they're uncatchable. They've been fortunate that Molde, realistically, their biggest challenges have dropped a lot of points already. But this is an express train that it's like a dog on that you can't control at all. They're a hell of a team right now.
Yeah, interestingly enough, just looking at the stats from our partners at Y-Scout, they're not top of the league for XG or possession, funnily enough. Top of the possession league is Brann, surprisingly with 61% roughly, and top of the XG league is Molde, who we haven't talked about, but they are currently not doing too well, 7th in the league, your preseason title predicted team. But Glimt are the ones who have scored the most goals, 26 goals, by miles more than anyone else at the moment. Molde scored 20, of course. Do you think they have changed their style slightly? I mean, it seems like a lot of their goals it seems like they're very clinical. Do you know what I mean? I feel like have they evolved slightly into sort of more of a, I don't know, Klopp Liverpool sort of team from maybe more of a possession team, or is that an inaccurate statement?
Yeah, I noticed that their possession stats were not as high this year. And they have been looking at ways that I think they've let the opposition try to play a bit of football whenever they can and then hit them dangerously on the break. So, yeah, they do seem to adapt year on year. I said, didn't I, certainly last year they struggled to break down sides, didn't they, that have this low block and stuff. I think they found ways to tease teams out of doing that. But there's not many teams in Eliteserien who are amazing defensively. You know what I mean? And I think the makeup of the league this season does suit Glimt a bit more because there's just not many teams. The only way really you can beat a team like this when they're this good is to fight fire with fire and outscore them in a shootout. But they want to suck you into a shootout. You know what I mean? I don't think there's many teams that are capable of just defending really stoutly against them and frustrating them, keeping a clean sheet and then beating them 1-0 or something. I just don't think there's the qualities there to do that. So it will take a team like Molde, who Brann nearly beat them because they've got offensive firepower that can fight back at the other end. You see where I'm coming from? So yeah, at the moment, just the league setup makeup is really suiting them perfectly. And yeah, I think there has been a little bit of a tweak of the style of it.
Yeah, I have to say they give me Hacken vibes actually this season. They're very
me
fast,
as well.
Fast transitions, quite a physical team as well now. A bit more, not as laboured. I think in possession, maybe a little bit more sort of straight to the point, if you know what I mean. So maybe there's some sort of evolution there, and that's the impression I get. Steve, you've got 3 minutes to talk about Hacken 0, Lillestrøm 0, and also I'm going to start you with a curveball. So 3 minutes combined here. What are Sarpsborg doing in third place with 10 goals scored in 8 games?
Oh, I'm going to have to pass on the Sarpsborg one because I've not seen an awful lot of their football recently, but they're another team that have completely evolved their style this year from what was high press, high energy, frantic football to a bit more control this year. If you look at this, the manager, Stefan Billborn's done really well, I think, to change things up. But I did want to talk about Lillestrøm against Hacken. It ended 0-0. This was a match which a few people were asking me about because it didn't go as predicted. We all thought this was going to be a high-scoring game and probably Lillestrøm winning it because Hacken had conceded 16 goals in the last 4 games. And, to keep a clean sheet against this Lillestrøm attack was really surprising. I do struggle to predict Hacken. I must say, since they've come into the league, I never get them right that often. I didn't really see them putting up that much resistance here. And really, I think it was the first 25 minutes where Lillestrøm missed their chance. Against a team that's vulnerable, the confidence wasn't there. It looked a matter of time before they'd break through, but because they didn't take their chances or they weren't as clinical, They didn't show enough of the quality. I think HamKam started to believe, we can compete now. And I think from like the half an hour mark onward, it was quite an even game. HamKam actually had the best chance of the game. I think it was Udal in the 70th minute. It was a massive chance. It was a free header about 5 yards out, and he missed. So they could have been walking away with all 3 points. But Lillestrøm, the problem Lillestrøm have sometimes, if their physical attributes in the game are not bullying the opposition, they do lack a little bit of quality, on the ball, technical quality. Yerman Assen aside, there's just not enough of it at times where there's a bit of magic that can happen. So I think they'll be disappointed. There was definitely a hangover feel from the cup final loss. That if you want to be competing for medals, you can't be drawing against HamKam. You just can't be. So I think poor result for them. Good one for HamKam. That clean sheet will do in the world of good after conceding so many goals. So fair play to them. And they dealt with Lillestrøm pretty well. I mean, Lillestrøm's XG overall was only about 0.7. So good result for HamKam.
Perfect. That'll do for part 1. Thank you very much, Mr. Meatman. We will be back in part 2, and then we're going to talk about Sweden.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast. You're with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Fadugba. We're going to talk about the Allsvenskan now, and round number 10 is complete. We're officially a third of the way through the season. That's going to read through the results. Mjällby 0, Halmstad 2, Brommapojkarna 1, Sirius 2, Kalmar with a 2-1 win against Norrköping, Elfsborg 3, Malmö 0. Djurgården 1, AIK 0, Hammarby 0, Värnamo 2, Hacken 4, IFK Gothenburg 1, and then Degerfors 1, Varberg 1. Some eye-catching results from this round, no doubt about it whatsoever. And only one place to start, really, and that's at the top of the table, where we have a new leader. Elfsborg beating Malmö 3-0 to go joint level on points, 25 points, with a better goal difference. I mean, not many people saw this one coming, Jonathan, did they?
Yeah, not many people saw this coming, including myself. Did not see this at all. And I don't think anyone's seen Elfsborg coming in general. Top of Allsvenskan now, which is remarkable, really. And I mean, I know they're joint top in terms of points, but they have a better goal difference. They've actually scored more goals than Malmö this season. Everyone's sort of bigging up Malmö for how well they've done. Well, Elfsborg have scored more goals and conceded fewer. So we really have to start talking about Elfsborg and taking them seriously. I thought Malmö on the day were quite poor. Just seemed to be gone a bit flat, and I wonder if the obviously the news that's come out that Hugo Larsson is leaving the club for a Allsvenskan transfer record fee. I just wondered if that, because that was announced on the day of the game, pretty much. I think it was a sort of Fabrizio Romano special. Here we go. And it's since filtered through, of course, and been confirmed. And today it was announced, but obviously he kind of confirmed it before the game started, pretty much. So I don't know if maybe that was a bit of a distraction. Shouldn't be. I mean, he did start the game, but still, just felt like Malmö a little bit just distracted and out of joints, really. Really good start from Elfsborg. I've always often thought this season so far that Elfsborg are a better second half team than they are a first half team. They tend to sort of like be quite slow. And then improve in the second half. But this was completely different. They were really on it from the first whistle, really. Of course, Lagerbielke scored, the centre-back. Svinge Johnson got a goal as well. And then they wrapped it up with a third goal. And it's Malmö's first defeat of the season.
I mean, one thing I've noticed with Elfsborg is the goals really do get spread around the team so much. It feels like everyone's capable of hitting the back of the net. You know, the strikers, the wingers, fullbacks obviously get chip in occasionally as well. Johan Larsson, one of your favourites, scored the other week, didn't he? But I mean, it's a stunning run of wins in a row now for Elfsborg. Of course, they did finish second, silver medal. I think it was the 2020 COVID season, wasn't it? So they do have some experience of being up there as such. But I mean, I guess we've got to ask the question now: are they a serious title challenger, Jonathan? Can you see them lasting the pace in a title battle?
From my point of view, I don't think they'll win the league. But then again, I have been guilty of underestimating Elfsborg at times in recent seasons. They've never been a team that have really been massively on my radar, and I think that, I think that with 10 games gone now, we're 30% of the way through the season. I don't think you can write them off at this moment in time. They're as I said, they're strong defensively. If you actually look at their backline, Holman, Lagerbielke, Hult, and Larsen, that's a really strong defensive line, to be fair to them. And that explains why they've got a relatively decent, the best defensive record in Allsvenskan so far. I then thought to myself, they've had quite easy games. If you look at their recent run of fixtures, they've won their last 7 in a row. They've won 8 in a row, Steve, sorry. Since they lost at home to Hacken on the first day of the season and drew with Varberg away. They've won 8 in a row. But my feeling was maybe this is a bit of a false dawn, because they played Bromma-Poikana, Degerfors, Mjällby, Halmstad, Sirius, Värnamo, and then Norrköping, literally pretty much the best run you could have in this league. And I thought, well, yeah, good 7 wins, but they're playing Malmo now, and their run's about to come to an end. Completely blown Malmo away, really. Maybe mitigating circumstances, like I say, for Malmo. I think it was a bit of an off day. Nielsen described it, the Malmo player Nielsen described it as just like a really bad day for them. Rydström said it was a terrible first half. He was really angry at halftime. It's been described in the media and things like that, like a bit of a wake-up call for them, really. But you've got to hold your hands up and say that this Elfsborg team is capable of challenging bigger teams. I mean, the comeback win against Norrköping as well, I think, was a great sign of their resilience. They've shown a propensity to come from behind. Obviously, they're 1-0 down and 1-2-1 with sort of 85th minute winner. They did the same against Sirius away. They were sort of 2-1 down, then 3-2 down, and came back to win 4-3 with two late goals, 87th minute and 89th minute. So, they're ticking all the boxes at this moment in time. They can beat teams comfortably. They beat Bromma-Poikana 5-0. They beat Halmstad 6-1. As you said there, they've got a good diversity of goal scorers. It's not like they've got one man where if you stop him, you can stop the team. They're getting contributions from all areas of the pitch. There's literally, I think, every single player in the team more or less has got a goal this season. If you run through their sort of first 11, and if you're not getting goals, they're assisting. Roma's contributed with goals. Kasim came into the team, the youngster, and he, the 19-year-old, he got an assist against Malmo. They get injuries to players, but they can replace them. So, Jeppe Ockels came in and got a good goal. Ben Hartson, of course, has done well, but he had to settle for a place not even in the team. I think he might have had an injury knock, but he didn't play, and he's a player who can contribute. So really, they're ticking all the boxes. I still think they lack a sort of top level goal scorer, but Gudjonsson, if he can contribute with sort of 10 to 15 goals, he's already got 4. Maybe you could say that they don't need a top sort of striker. So listen, the next 3 games they've got Djurgården at home, AIK away, and then Hammarby at home. I'd say it's a tough run of fixtures, but given the way these Stockholm teams are playing this season, maybe it might not be. So I definitely think that heading into the summer break, we have to consider Elfsborg title contenders.
Yeah, fair play to them. I've got to say, it's they've come out of nowhere. We never expected this, did we? Malmo looked like they were going to be running away with this league, and now they've dropped points in 2 straight games. Still a very, very strong start, though, for Malmo, 8 wins out of 10. But this Hugo Larsen transfer, I mean, tell us a bit more about this, because, I mean, we've talked off air about this guy, I think even on air as well. I don't think did you ever really see it coming this early? I mean, it was one of those where we were thinking, we'll get a full season out of him, surely, at least. But he's moving on very, very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. He's moving on quickly, but that's the nature of the beast. We revealed one of your 10 to watches. It's no secret anymore that he was on my 10 to watch. Obviously, the first player to get a big money transfer. All reports point to the fact that he's broken the Allsvenskan transfer record. That's how Malmo reported it anyway. It broke on Sunday, as I mentioned. It's 132 million Swedish kroners, which is about, I think, 11 million euros.
That is a lot of money for Allsvenskan.
For an 18-year-old who was recently pictured on a push bike getting a lift home after a game. Just basically a kid, basically. Sometimes the figures that were thrown around and the hype that we put on these people, he's just an 18-year-old kid at the end of the day. But yeah, he's a talent, that's for sure. He's been watched by so many teams. I think there was talks about maybe Dortmund looking at him as well. He's going to move there till 2028. It's been coming, obviously. Bournemouth wanted to sign him and loan him out to Lorient, their sort of sister club now, with that whole takeover. But he's come out and said, I came here as a 12-year-old with big dreams, and I've now actually been a part of the team, and I'm incredibly grateful for the coaches and teammates who have supported me. And it's good money for the whole club. I think he's got a good level head on his shoulders. Turned down Bournemouth, as I said. I think he's quite mature and intelligent in that sense. I'd like to think he's not going to be one that sort of does 6 months and ends up back in Allsvenskan. I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. I could see him. I mean, Bundesliga is a step up, so I think he may need some time to adapt. He may have a loan, but I could certainly see him, playing in the Bundesliga. I think he's of the level, and maybe even going on from there. He's only 18. He's played nearly 60 games for Malmo, Steve. So he's already got a good body of experience. It's not like he's just been broken through. 60 games is a good 2 seasons, pretty much, more or less. So he's done his time in a way. He will leave, obviously, when the summer break comes out. I would like to have seen him for a bit longer, if I'm being honest. But the sports director, Danny Anderson, said we wish him luck in Europe, and we'll keep in contact with the hope of welcoming him back again one day. So, yeah, massive transfer and fair play.
Yeah, good luck to Hugo Larsson. And it looks like a very intriguing title battle. We'll be talking about Hacken a bit later in the show, but we must move on now to Stockholm because there was a big game, derby game between Djurgården and AIK on the weekend. Now, I advised someone. Someone was asking me about this game because they wanted to bet on Djurgården. They were saying that AIK's form is so poor. What do you think about the game, Steve? And I said, one thing you just never do. Never, ever back Djurgården to win a Stockholm derby. They're useless in them. But, I mean, this is a very, very rare win for them against AIK. AIK normally beat them, I think, 5 in a row. But it's ended 1-0 to Djurgården. Fair play to them. But really, the big talking point has been, well, off the field with crowd trouble. I mean, I saw some of the tweets you were posting up there, Jonathan. I mean, there's plenty to discuss here. Tell us about the drama of this Stockholm derby.
Yeah, crazy game, and there's been repercussions already. I think this is going to rumble on, but I mean, essentially, AIK fans were 1-0 down, and there was 2 red cards. There was an incident with two late red cards. Otieno and Bjornström, I think, and basically after that, AIK fans decided they'd seen enough and started launching lit flares onto the pitch. There was an incident in the second half, Steve, early in the second half, where I genuinely, looking at the back of like the AIK fan section, with the plumes of black smoke and the lit flares, I honestly was thinking to myself, like, I'm not sure if I'd actually like to be in that away end, because I was wondering how do you even breathe? I was like, look, there's so much thick smoke. I was thinking, and you could, watching it on TV, you couldn't even see the pitch really for about 5 minutes. That's kind of like a trend in Stockholm derbies, but this one was really like thick. I thought it was quite thick smoke, and even before this incident broke out, I was thinking that is quite. I personally felt that was quite dangerous for the fans in that section, because it's all well and good if you're the one lighting the flares, but if you have any breathing issues or anything like that, like it did really look like proper thick black smoke that you wouldn't want to breathe in too much. But yeah, basically, as soon as the red cards came in for Bjornström and Otieno in the 90th minute, AIK fans decided they've seen enough, launched all those lit flares onto the pitch en masse. It was like raining down onto the terraces, onto the pitch, sorry. And then from there, pretty much the game just broke and all hell broke loose. There was flares everywhere. The stadium was on fire at one point. Seats, the police stormed onto the pitch. There was one scene with Steve where it was like RoboCop or something. The police charging towards the AIK away end. Fights broke out between the police and the AIK fans. The match was abandoned for about an hour with about a few minutes left to play. They then eventually got back and played the last sort of 5 minutes of stoppage time, whatever it was remaining. They had to warm up again. The players had to warm up again, but really it's shameful scenes. I think the Djurgården sporting director came out and said that he would be ashamed of it if it was Djurgården had done this. It's not the first time. We've seen in the last Stockholm derby last season where fans, I think it was the Djurgården Hammarby game, fans were chucking flares into each other's sections. It's quite dangerous, and I think at some point, Steve, someone could get seriously hurt. I'm all for flares. I'm all for like the derby sort of the derby fun and like the spirit of it and the flares. I'm not someone who thinks that there should be no pyrotechnics and that kind of thing. I know they are trying to clamp down massively, police on the pyrotechnics. But I think that level of smoke and just that kind of aggression in terms of chucking it at other fans and stuff, it risks injuring someone in a serious way. And like I said, even the just the sheer amount of smoke, I think that's.
I mean, the stadium was actually on fire. Technically,
well, I didn't. Parts of the stadium were on fire. You can go on Nordic Football Podcast Twitter and look at the picture from the stadium. There's a section of the stadium that is literally on fire, but it's not like a major fire that's going to bring the house down. But it's still the stadium had to be evacuated, Steve. Like they had to get rid of certain sections of the crowd to put the fire out. They, like I say, police fighting the fans. Serious incident, and the game nearly got abandoned. So they only completed it pretty much because there was only a few minutes left. But if this is going to be the reaction to teams losing a Stockholm derby, we're in this. I feel like we're in this situation a couple of times a season where it gets a little bit out of hand with the smoke and the flares. And I think that this isn't going to be the last we hear of this. I think this could rumble on. It's been. I think there's a wide acknowledgement that this is not really acceptable in Swedish football.
Yeah, this seems to be happening far too much, and it's always in these Stockholm derbies. And I saw something recently in the Dutch league. I think it was Feyenoord, Ajax, and those clubs are literally on the last warnings. Apparently, if it happens again in those fixtures, the Dutch FA have said, right, the fixtures are banned there and then, and there'll be repercussions for the offenders. Are we getting to the stage where it needs to be almost zero tolerance? I don't know, because it did look. It's like, as soon as a team's fans is not happy about what's going on, they're spitting their dummy out, and they just, there's a line, and it's just gone far too over it now. To be honest, it's not acceptable. Shameful scenes, like you say. On the field itself, a 1-0 win for Djurgården. Just looking at the statistics, I can see why the IK fans were so frustrated, because that, according to Flash Score anyway, they had just 2 attempts in the whole match with none on target. That's shameful in a derby. They normally beat Djurgården, like I said. This has got probably their worst performance against them in a long time. IK have got some serious problems, haven't they?
They have serious problems, yeah. There's serious conversations about could they actually get relegated. I don't think they will, but that's the extent of it. There was an extraordinary board meeting called after the game. So, they are currently in the relegation zone, of course, and they've won 1 game out of 10. So at a certain point, you have to stand up and say, yeah, this is getting serious. And I guess that point is now. As I said, there's 11 people on the board at AIK, and they've decided they're going to have an extraordinary board meeting. That's been confirmed by Chairman Robert Falk. I think that Brandstrom's job is in serious jeopardy. I've already said that. I think I said it in the second podcast.
You said from the first match. To be fair, you've called this one. Call it a sixth sense, early doors, whatever. You kind of knew, and I think we all know where it's going to head. This manager's not going to keep his job for much longer, is he? It just feels like he's maybe the wrong fit of manager for the club of this stature.
Yeah, like I say, I called it early on. He had a bit of a haunted look about him, I think, in the early games when they lost at the beginning of the season. And I'm not sort of hinting that the job's too big for him, but I think he's walked into a bit of a trap here in terms of like the level of players they've bought. Maybe did he have the say in some of the recruitment? I've already said that about the recruitment just seems to be there's a lot of question marks with AIK this season in terms of who's doing the recruitment. What are the incentives? Are these incentives above board, payments to agents, things like that? Some of the signings they've made that have been questioned in terms of like who actually decided on them, and is there something underhand going on? The new sporting director obviously has come in. He's come out and said now that they need reinforcements, they need defenders. There's a lot going on at board level. The scenes at the derby now, they don't really help. Obviously, there was a public bust-up reportedly between Brandstrom and Jimmy Durmaz. Apparently, there was accusations that Durmaz had been trying to get the manager out of his job. And then the manager confronted him in front of the whole squad and said, like, if you've got something to say it to my face. So apparently there was a big sort of meeting where they both sort of cleared the air and had a chat. Durmaz actually started the game against Djurgården, so maybe that was a bit of a go out there and prove me wrong type thing from Brandstrom. Maybe a bit of smart management, really, sort of like a, if you're going to call me out, then let's see what you can do. I thought that was pretty intelligent, but it's not paid off, of course. They're in massive trouble. As I said, Bosse Anderson, the Djurgården sporting director, said this is the biggest scandal I've seen in Swedish football. That's only going to add to it in terms of what's happened and what the behaviour of the AIK fans. So, on the pitch, off the pitch, with the manager, with the sporting director, with the club recruitment, now with the fans, like every single element of AIK seems to be sort of up in flames at the moment. And it is really worrying times for them, yeah.
I'm just looking at their fixture list. 4 of their next 6 games, they've got Kalmar, Elfsborg, Hacken, and Malmö. I mean, there's a very, very good chance that at the halfway stage of the season, they'll still be in the relegation zone. I know they have gone down before. I think it was like 2009. So it's not completely unheard of for AIK, but they're in a firefighting mission already this season. I will ask the question, could they go down?
We were here 2 or 3 years ago in the COVID season, I think, when they had a really bad season. They sack record and all, and everything kind of cleaned itself up, and they ended up, I think, lower mid-table. I've got a feeling a similar thing will happen. I think they're too good to go down. We should really talk about Djurgården a little bit as well. I mean, they've, as you mentioned, in terms of your friend asking for a prediction, they've only one victory against AIK since 2012. So this was a massive result for them to get another win. AIK has beaten them 14 times, I think, and 7 draws and 1 win for Djurgården. So they've balanced the scales a little bit there with the second win. And that kind of shows where AIK are, really. Even the things they take for granted, such as beating Djurgården, they can't do anymore. Djurgården have had a good week or so. 3 wins, obviously they beat Hacken as well, so that they are sort of starting to get a little bit of stability, I think. But yeah, I don't think AIK will go down. I mean, if you look at it, they're 1 win away from being out of it. You've got EFK down there, you've got Varberg down there, you've got sort of Degerfors down there, Sirius. But they are going to have to buckle up their ideas soon, because if you look at it, Steve, they're 6 points behind Värnamo, 6 points behind Mjällby, they're 9 points behind Halmstad, they're 10 points behind Brommapojkarna. These are teams that you'd expect them to sort of finish above. So they're running out of teams that they can actually chase and catch, if you know what I mean. They're already 5 points behind Degerfors in 12th. I know they've got a game in hand, but the point I'm making here is that they're playing catch up. EFK even, I wouldn't expect them to go down. So you'd think their form might turn a little bit. So they're running out of teams to catch, really. They need to start bucking up their ideas, because otherwise it could get to a point where it's almost too late for them. But no, I don't think they'll go down.
Yeah, very good answer there, I must say. We'll stick actually with Stockholm. Vicky has asked a question at Burra Vicky. Do you think Marti Cifuentes will get sacked soon? And this is in response to Hammarby's fairly poor form as well. They've just lost 2-0 at home to Värnamo. I actually watched his interview after the game on the Discovery Plus on the Twitter there, and he seemed quite calm and reserved. I thought he spoke well. He seemed in a good phase, but nevertheless, when you only got 12 points from 11 games, as Hammarby have, there's going to be questions asked. So, I mean, briefly, what are your thoughts on Hammarby's season and Marti Cifuentes?
Yeah, well, the first thing to note is that he might have seemed relaxed, but I don't think the fans were too. I don't think the players were too relaxed, because they had to wait and weren't allowed out of the stadium after this game. there was reports of 60 fans waiting outside for them, outside the stadium, where the players usually exit the stadium. So, I mean, the security staff would not let the players out because of those fans waiting for them. Now, I'm not saying that they were going to do anything sinister, but I mean, they definitely weren't going to be shaking their hands and saying thanks for a good game. So, yeah, the players had to delay their plans to get home. Nahir Basara came out and said, we can understand the point of view of the fans. You know, there was talk about, I think one of the security guys is on record as saying he wasn't sure where players would exit the stadium. They were thinking of maybe getting a secret getaway. Maybe there's a basement they can crawl out of or something like that. But yeah, it got a little bit heated. Basara said that they had a chat with some of the fans after the game when they were finally allowed out. And he said, it's disappointing from all sides. Obviously, they lost at home to Värnamo, who Värnamo becoming a little bit of a bugbear for Hammarby. I'm pretty sure they, don't quote me on this, but I think did they beat them home and away last season? I'll have to double check. But yeah, it's not been a good season for Hammarby so far. I thought that they were the better team last week. Obviously, we didn't have a show last week, but I thought when they played IFK away, thought they were the better team until they got the red card, obviously, and then a late penalty cost them that win. They've had a lot of injury problems. I think some of their better players have been injured, but they just don't have that blend yet. And of course, in the last double game week that they had 2 red cards for 2 of their best defenders. So even when they're sort of just about turning their form around, they've sort of, Jukanovic was doing quite well, then he got injured. There was one game, I think recent game, where they had 2 or 3 injuries in the same match. So they're just not really, the season's just not getting up and running really. That was the game, I think, I can't remember who it was against, but anyway, I think it might have been against Djurgården, where they had quite a few injuries in that 4-3 win. Then they drew at Degerfors. Of course, they had another red card to deal with, came back and, they did okay. But Montana Majer got a goal equaliser when they were 2-1 down. But yeah, just an up and down start to the season. In terms of the answer to the question, I do think Cifuentes is quite well liked, actually. I think he's quite well rated by the management at Hammarby. So I'd be very surprised if they were to pull the trigger without more evidence to suggest that he can't turn things around. I think he will probably get the full season unless things really go pear-shaped. It's a new team at Hammarby this season, and I think that's a mitigating factor. I don't think they were expected to really challenge, but when fans are sort of waiting for the team outside the stadium, it's never a good sign, is it?
No, it's not a good sign. And you're right, by the way. Värnamo did beat them twice last year. Cifuentes did say in that interview after the game how he finds Värnamo's style and approach really difficult to deal with. Something about how they set themselves up just doesn't suit, the Hammarby players. I watched some of the second half, actually, and they just didn't create many big chances, Hammarby. They struggled against a well-organised and disciplined team. Värnamo, one of those awkward sides, aren't they, who can frustrate you. Good defensive record. Probably just lack of goals that does cost them. But worrying times for some big clubs in that bottom half of the table, right now, I must say, in Allsvenskan, it's a bit of an unusual look. And we're going to finish the show talking about the Gothenburg derby, another team down there, of course, IFK. I've got a couple of comments I'll mention about this game a bit later as well. But 4-1 win for Hacken. Again, a sign of the times, really. It's a bit like Brann Rosenborg, isn't it? I was talking earlier. I mean, IFK obviously were the big dogs in this city for several years. At the moment, it's Hacken, and they're showing why right now.
Yeah, and a few interesting tidbits here before we get going from a recruitment point of view. It's been reported that Ajax were at the game tonight, reportedly with eyes on Benny Traore maybe, and also Armand Romeo. Both of them had good games in a 4-1 win for BK Hacken. Obviously, Gothenburg is fresh in my mind, Steve. It was not even a month ago yet that I was in that fine stadium watching both teams, watching Hacken obviously, and then watching IFK the next day. So I did feel a little bit tinge of sadness not being there for that match. It was a heated derby. They got a singer in pre-match, Hacken, to do the sort of Hacken anthem, which isn't bad, by the way. Maybe not quite as emotional as the IFK. I can see your scarf there in the background, by the way, Steve. But yeah,
I actually tweeted something about that song myself. I did say it's not a patch on Snart Sneaking Poseidon.
Well, you would say that with your scarf. I think you're wearing
She
blue and white.
She did sing it fairly well, though. I must say, I'll give her some credit. She belted it out quite well.
It's not a good day for you and your type, because obviously a 4-1 destruction. In fairness to EF Rosenborg, I thought they started the first half well. I thought Hacken were really slack. Regard, for example, made an error that led to the first goal, just gave a needless throw in away. Led to EF equaliser. Larsson got the first goal for Hacken. Then Gustav Norlin equalised. And, half time, I felt that EF quite a decent chance, maybe, even though they were massive underdogs for this game. But Hacken, they have that ability to up the tempo, which they did in the second half. Benny Troyer and Regard especially were on song. A positive sign for Hacken is that the Gustafsson twins are back as well. Samuel and Simon back from an injury now as well. So I think that's a massive boost for their midfield. They still have injuries. Ibrahim Sadiq's been ruled out for the rest of the spring term. Mamadou Sonko had to come in and play, and he got an assist. So I don't actually think Hacken have been amazing in the last few games I've seen when they played Djurgården away and in this game. But they just have that ability to up the tempo when needed, like you said there with Glimt. They remind me a little bit of Glimt in that sense. They can really just bring the intensity when they need to. I still think there are a few weaknesses in Hacken's side that they do worry me in terms of winning the league. I think there's a couple of areas that in that team that they need to maybe strengthen or just tighten up a bit. I think there's one or two players that have been a little bit slack, I'd say, because I think they get into really good positions, and I think they should be doing maybe slightly better actually than they are this season. I think they've been quite wasteful at times in the final third, which sounds ridiculous considering they've won 4-1, but they're just too strong for EFK at the moment. EFK can't handle them. EFK are quite an old team, too weak in that sense, and just didn't have the physicality to be able to maintain the intensity for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I watched this game, and I think you've given it a very good assessment there, actually. I think EFK got sucked into trying to play football with Hacken. They just can't do that. They can't go toe-to-toe with them. But they did miss a trick in the first half. I thought EFK should have led at half-time. They had enough chances. I was actually quite impressed with the goalkeeper for Hacken, Peter Abrahamsson. Honestly, I've never noticed this guy before. There's been anything special or remarkable, but I thought he had a tremendous game. He made a couple of key saves at crucial points. He quite impressed me. And then the second half, it was very Buda Glimt-esque. Like you say, it was wave after wave of like counter-attack. EFK were caught out with some poor positioning. I think they just did sort of what my own team, Leeds United, do this year. They just try and they leave themselves far too open when they were chasing the game. But I mean, Hacken are ruthless. They just want to rack up the score even more. I mean, they're going for more goals even when they should be looking for just control of the football game. They just want to score as many as they can, and they're a heck of an attacking unit, I must say. Disappointing for EFK. I mean, they're in trouble. I mean, they're down there in the third bottom of the table, one win. I mean, if they keep defending like this, I think they're in massive, massive trouble, because at times it was a disgraceful defensive performance. As good as Hacken are going forward, I mean, it's not good enough at the back.
Is that a question?
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on the EFK structure and defense, Jonathan? Because it's just not there.
I think, well, they've got injuries, but not that many injuries. Gustav Svensson missed the game. Linus Karlstrand came in. It's quite funny that he said he wanted revenge and that he found last season unbearable, and then he gets in the team and is part of another sort of beating. The biggest worry for you, of course, this result wasn't even a surprise. I think a 4-1 win was kind of normal, and that is a massive worry, I think, for the club and the organisation as a whole. That they're almost borderline accepting that they're the second best team in Gothenburg. I mean, that is a 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that would have been a disgrace. Now it's almost like expected. And I think that is quite a worrying trend for EFK. I feel like there's almost an air of Leicester City about them, in the sense of like maybe almost just complacent, like feeling that we're still a big club. It's fine. We can lose that game. That's fine. We can lose that game. That's fine. We can get 1 point here. That's okay. I just, like there's no real, I don't feel like any real urgency about the club at the moment. There's question marks about the goalkeeper. He made a howler against Hammarby. And Pontus Darbo's come back, Warner, Hahn last season. Some fans I saw on Twitter saying, why did we swap these two keepers? I thought Hahn was brilliant last season. They just kind of let him go. So there are some strange decisions going on. They're really going to need some good recruitment in the summer. But then again, the feeling I got in Gothenburg was that maybe they just kind of accept that they don't have the finances available. But this is one of the biggest teams in the league. So at a certain point, if you just have an air of like, well, it doesn't really matter, it could catch up to you. And I don't think they're going to get relegated, but they have a striker who's clearly too old now. With all due respect to Marcus Berg, it wouldn't surprise me if he retires at the end of the season in terms of just not physical enough to deal with like the 90-minute games. I think they have a decent midfield. I think they have got some quite good midfielders in there that I like. I like Carl, and I think Hagen's done okay. They've got two decent fullbacks, but again, they're aging. Centre-backs are all right. I quite like Bangsford, but there's a bit of a weakness to them, I think. There's just a bit of fragility. They're not a team you can hang your hat on. And as I say, I thought in the Hammarby game, I thought they were quite lucky in that game. Even though they were at home, I thought Hammarby outplayed them at times in that match and maybe should have wrapped it up. And then obviously they just got suckered with the penalty. But they don't play in phases well enough at IFK for me. There's always at least 20 minutes or so where they don't go to sleep, but they just don't have that intensity for the full 90 minutes. And I think even though the joint managers are doing a decent job, I think, they got them playing okay. I actually thought they were quite good for 45 minutes. Like you say, I totally agree. If it wasn't for the goalkeeper, they would have been maybe 2 or 3-0 down, 2 or 3-1 down by half time. So it's small margins, I think, but I still feel like that's part of the problem. It's almost like, well, we nearly scored 3, so things are fine. And it's just not that. I don't think there's anyone staying after the game. I don't think there's 60 fans staying after the game to sort of ask questions, if you know what I mean, like the Hammarby fans. And they're doing much worse than Hammarby. So it's going to be an interesting summer for them. Let's put it that way. I think there's some work to be done there because 1 win in 10, Steve, it's not good enough. Yeah,
they certainly didn't lack for passion, and they fought hard, and they on another day they could have scored 2 or 3 goals for sure. But the manager situation, it was quite clear that Hacken's experienced title-winning manager did a job on them in the second half. Really, I think, as you might expect, really, Hogmo's a very good coach, isn't he? So,
yeah. I have to say, by the way, the transformation he's done at Hacken is unbelievable. I think we almost take for granted how good they are now. How much he's turned them in one season. Like they just, like I said, I think they are a bit wasteful at times. I still have question marks. Is Benito actually a natural centre forward? I'm not sure. I think Jurgarden did a number on them with Danielson and Lofgren, for example, in both games. Actually, even though they lost that 1-4-1 that I went to, I still think they miss Yeremiev a little bit in terms of that physicality up front, and I think that might come back and haunt Hacken. But the job he's done there, the way they play football, and just the way that it's like this, so doesn't matter if it's Sadiq, it doesn't matter if it's Gustafsson, it doesn't matter if it's Aman Romeo, it doesn't matter if it's Pontus Darbo came on and scored the youngster. They've just got ability in all areas of the pitch and score goals from anywhere. And it is Glimt-esque. I'd like to see them challenge this season and try and win the league, but I still think there's a little bit of fragility, but we have to doff the cap to Per-Mathias Hogmo because he's done a remarkable job there, really. I don't even think people are really realising just how good this Hacken team is, actually.
You're probably right about that one. I mean, if there is an issue, it is at the moment away from home against sides that actually can defend, like your Halmstads of this world, and Djurgården obviously do have good defenders. So but at home, I would back them against anyone. I really would. I think they're capable of actually crushing sides at this home venue on their own artificial surface. They absolutely rinse teams completely. IFK, by the way, they do have a favourable run of games coming up quite soon. So unlike IE I could actually see them get out of trouble by the midway point of the season. But look, fixtures are not won on paper, are they? So they've still got to start performing and getting the results on the field. But they do have what would appear to be softer games, a massive 4 or 5 games coming up for them ahead of the summer break. So before we finish, just one question I want to ask you here. And it was from Showtime, Barisha. I meant to ask you it during the Hugo Larsson section. But he said, who do you think will be the next starlet to make the jump? Well, I'm going to answer that first, and it might be an idea for people to have a look at that 10 to watch section that we did on Patreon early in the year. But is there someone you might want to put a name out there as a bit of a teaser, Jonathan?
I'm going to give the same answer you did. Patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you want to know the answers to that. Simple as that, really. So I very much echo your sentiments. I'm going to hit you with a counter question, Steve. Can you tell me the previous Allsvenskan transfer record holder?
Zlatan?
Nope.
Can you give me a year that this transfer?
I'll give you the answer because we're running out of time on this show. But yeah, Alexander Isak is the
of course.
About 95 million, I think, SEK. So Hugo Larsson's actually smashed it. And I've got to give tribute to Hugo Larsson because I did say on that Patreon show that he had commented publicly that he wants to break the Allsvenskan transfer record. And lo and behold, Steve, 2 months later, he has done it. So fair play to Hugo Larsson. In terms of replacements, I don't think it should be lost on anyone that Ajax were at the Gothenburg derby this evening. I think that pretty much sums it up. So take your pick from that game.
There you go. Take a look at who's involved in that game. And there was some great talent on show, some young goal scorers as well. And that'll do.
One of them might be in the tent to watch.
Yeah, that'll do for this show then. I think that we're done for the week. It's always a pleasure, Jonathan. And I thought there was some really good discussion in there, actually, I must say. Some really in-depth stuff, especially on the Swedish section. Always good discussing with you.
Likewise, my friend. And we shall be back soon. And yeah, I mean, we're getting to the summer break, so there's only a few weeks left now. And then, unfortunately, we have a month's break in Sweden, but we'll continue to bring you as much content as possible on the Nordic Football Podcast. So stay tuned, keep an eye on YouTube. Don't forget our Twitter at Nordic Foot Pod. You can find me at JFFootball, JFFUTBOL, and Steve at Meatman Soccer as always. And you can find us on patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you want to support us. Did put up a weekend preview. It was quite late this week, but did get one of the two selections correct. But yeah, keep an eye on that as well if you just want to support us as well. So yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. Good to see you as always.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to all the listeners. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.